I'm Chef Ashley. I'm a pastry chef instructor at the Escoffier School of Culinary Arts, and I've just pulled my sponge cakes out of the oven and they're on a cooling rack ready to go to slice and get a crumb coat. So I'm going to go ahead and start that. So I'm going to go ahead and start to level off my cake. I want to get rid of this domed top and this little indent along the edge of this cake. I find the easiest way to do this is with a serrated knife. I choose a nice long knife so that I can get all the way through my cake in one cut and not have to turn it too many times. So I'm just going to take my knife, I'm going to hold it with just a really nice light grip, and I'm going to come along the side of my cake and I'm kind of just going to mark my cake. I want to make sure my knife stays level to the ground. And sometimes you're going to get to the point where you're actually not cutting cake. That's because your cake is level at that point. We just need to cut the excess off. So I'm just kind of marking to see where my level points are. And then I'm just going to come straight across where I marked, and I'm going to come into the middle of my cake. In order to make sure that I don't get a really uneven slice, I go about halfway through my cake and then I turn it about 90 degrees and come back through to the middle again so that I'm sure that I'm going to end up with an even slice. And that's just going to pull the top off of my cake. We're going to put our crumbs over in a bowl to the side in what we as professionals like to call chef snacks. That's where we get all of our food from. And I have a leveled cake, so I'm just going to set this aside, bring this one over to the side so that I'm ready to cut this one. And again, I'm just going to mark the sides. This one has a big indent in the top, so I'm going to go a little bit further in so that I get a nice level top. So I'm just holding my knife flat and I'm actually turning my cake against the knife. The knife itself isn't moving while I'm doing this. So I get this marked, I can see my line all the way across my cake where I need to cut, and then I'm just going to come back in towards the middle, turn 90 degrees, come back to the middle again, one more turn, and I'm going to get the top sliced off of this cake. I like to flip them over and give them a little bit of a pat to make sure I get rid of any excess crumbs. And my cakes are ready for crumb coating. So I'm just going to clean off my counter really quick. If you have any crumbs on your counter, when you start crumb coating your cake, you're going to end up with crumbs in your final layer of frosting. Okay, now that my cakes are leveled, I want to go ahead and put a crumb coat on them. I'm going to go ahead and set up my work area with a turntable if you have one. You do not need a turntable, but it will make your life a lot easier so that you can spin your cake as you move. I need an offset spatula, and then obviously I need some frosting for my cake. So I'm going to start with my first layer of cake. I'm just going to take a big dollop of frosting. I'm going to put right in the middle of my cake. The easiest way to frost a cake is to actually work your way over the top and down the sides of your cake. So I just put a big amount of frosting in the middle of my cake. This frosting on the top, this actually is going to become the layer in the middle of my cake. So I want this to be a little bit thick because it's actually going to be where all the flavor in my cake frosting comes from. My sides, however, I just want to cover the sides enough to keep any of the crumbs inside my cake. So I'm just taking a little bit of frosting with my spatula and just kind of turning it over the edge of the cake. Just a little bit at a time, so that I get a little bit of frosting all the way around the edge of my cake. And then I'm going to spin it around a couple of times. I'm going to hold my spatula up. I'm just going to spin my cake around. So again, my spatula is staying still and my cake is moving. As I end up with frosting on my spatula that I don't want, I'm just going to scrape that off onto my bowl. So this bottom edge is going to get a little bit more when we put our top on. I'm just trying to get it so that this middle part is a little bit even and that I've got some all the way down my edges. Creating a nice flat top is really not that hard as long as you keep your offset spatula level. So I'm just going to create a top in there. And then I'm just going to come in with my second piece of cake and I'm going to put the cut side down towards the frosting that I just put on my cake. That's going to help to lock in even more crumbs. Okay, so I've got my top layer of cake on, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just gonna need a little bit more frosting because I have to go all the way down the sides of my cake, and now it's twice as tall as it was. So again, I'm just gonna work from the top, and I'm just gonna pull frosting down around the edges of my cake. Get a little more frosting here. The purpose of a crumb coat really is just to lock all the crumbs in and give something for your other coatings to stick to. This cake is going to get covered in fondant, so I just need it to be nice and smooth. I want to cover in any indents or any tears in the side of my cake. If there are any, you can see this spot here where it kind of stuck to the pan. Just going to put a little extra icing there so I get a nice smooth finish on my cake for when I'm ready to cover it with fondant. Again, I just need it to be sticky enough for my fondant to stick to it, and I want it to be nice and smooth. So it's okay that I can see cake in some places. I've still locked in all of my crumbs. And I've got a nice smooth finish all the way around the edges of my cake. So that's a crumb coat on a cake. If I were gonna go ahead and frost this, I would put it in the refrigerator, let this crumb coat set up for a few minutes, and then take it back out and then just continue to frost it in exactly the same manner. This one's gonna get covered with fondant, so I'm gonna go ahead and get set up to roll out my fondant.